We're going to show that this equation represents a sphere, and then we are going to find the center and radius of that sphere. So to start off with, let's remind ourselves what the equation of a sphere looks like. We have x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared plus z minus l quantity squared is equal to r squared. So this looks very similar to what a circle looks like. The only difference is we have 3 dimensions instead of 2. And HKL is, as we might expect, to be our center, and R is the radius. So we need to get our equation to look something like that so we can identify both the center and the radius of our sphere. The first thing that we're going to do once we have our equation is we are going to move all our variables onto the left-hand side of our equation. Let's group our x's together. So we're going to have 2x squared minus 8x plus 2y squared plus 2z squared plus 24z is equal to 1. Now at this point, you notice that every single one of these variables has a 2 in front of it. So let's just pull that out. Let's make it a little bit easier. Minus 4x plus y squared plus z squared plus 12z is equal to 1. And let's actually move that 2 over to the right-hand side. So we're going to divide both sides by 2. All right, so this looks a lot better. It looks a lot closer. The thing that we have to worry about now is you'll notice that our x values have like an x minus 4x instead of an x minus something quantity squared. Similarly, our z's also are problematic. We're going to have to do something to monkey around and get that where we want to be. This y, on the other hand, is going to be very simple because y squared is the same thing as y minus 0 squared. So that one already has the shape that we want it to have. All right, so what we are going to do for these two things, and we're going to start with x squared minus 4x. Because we want it as x minus something squared, we're going to have to complete the square. This is a technique that is super useful and also not one that we usually use too often. So a lot of times we have to reteach ourselves how we're going to do that. We're going to start off by completing the square with our x's, and then we're going to go and do that with our y's. So we're going to start off by setting x squared minus 4x is equal to 0. And technically we should identify our a's, b's, and c's. So ax squared, so a is 1, plus bx, so b is negative 4, plus c, so in this case c is 0. So it's nice to have that as a beginning point. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to take 1/2 of b and square that quantity. And in this case, our b is a negative 4, so negative 4 over 2 squared. So this is going to be a negative 2 squared, which means we are looking at a positive 4. We are going to add that value to both sides of our equation. So that is going to give us x squared minus 4x plus 4 is equal to 4. And now we can actually complete the square with the items on the left-hand side of our equation. So this is going to be x minus something quantity squared, and the right-hand side is still going to have a 4 in there. Now in this case, we notice that we have a minus 4 in the middle, so it's going to be minus, and usually it's very simple to figure out. In this case, it's x minus 2, because negative 2 times negative 2 is 4, and negative 2 plus negative 2 is minus 4. So there's our completing the square, and the equation that we are going to actually plug back in, the piece that we're going to plug back into our formula is going to be right here. So this is what we're going to pop back in, right? Because remember, we started with x squared minus 4, and we want to put in something equivalent, which would be x minus 2 quantity squared minus 4. So we're going to pop that whole thing back into our original equation. But before we do that, let's do the same thing with our z's. So in this case, our z's, we have z squared plus 12z is equal to 0. Let's list out our a's, b's, and c's again. Coefficient for z squared is 1. Coefficient for z is 12. And we have no constant. We are going to take 1/2 of b quantity squared. So this is going to be 12 divided by 2 squared, which is going to give us 6 squared, which is 36. And that actually tells us kind of where we're going with this as well. We're going to add this to both sides of our equation. Z squared plus 12z plus 36 is equal to 36. And then we are going to, notice in this case, we're going to have an add, and we want a 6, right? You can just leave that squared if you want, is equal to 36. And let's rewrite it one last time. Z squared minus 36 is equal to 0. So again, we started with stuff, we set it equal to 0. And we are going to end, and we're going to punch in z plus 6 quantity squared minus 36 back into our equation. So we haven't actually changed anything. All right. Whew. Let's pop that back into our equation. So this is going to give us, instead of all the x's that we had there, we've got x minus 2 quantity squared minus 4. There's our x's. And I'm going to put in our y minus 0 quantity squared. You don't technically need to put the 0 there, but it will remind ourselves that we're looking at 0 is the second number in our center. And then we're going to put in our z's, z plus 6 quantity squared minus 36 is equal to 1/2. Let's take all of our integers here, the minus 4 and the minus 36, and we're going to just move them over onto the other side of our equation. So we get x minus 2 squared plus y minus 0 squared plus z plus 6 squared is equal to 1/2 plus 36 plus 4. And I'm just going to do a little bit of math here on the side. 36 plus 4 is 40. And 40, if we get our denominator, common denominator, is going to be 80. So that's going to give us 81 over 2. In other words, 9 squared over 2. And we're going to rewrite our equation one last time. So we have x minus 2 quantity squared plus y minus 0 quantity squared plus z plus 6 quantity squared plus, or is equal to, is equal to 9. And instead of putting a 2, I'm going to put a square root of 2. And I'm going to pull a squared all the way to the outside. So now we see very clearly what our radius is going to be. So this tells us our center is going to be 2, 0, negative 6. Notice we had to flip the sign of everything. And our radius is going to be 9 over the square root of 2. Thank you for listening.